Welcome to Ready, Set, Real Estate, where we will help empower and educate you on many different aspects of real estate, finance, and investing. Each week, we will expand your knowledge and uncover hidden truths. We will break down real-world scenarios and study actual how-to strategies. Anyone can buy real estate, but together we'll ensure you make smart real estate investment decisions. Now, here's your host, award-winning author, international speaker, and real estate educator, Lisa Gillett.
Happy Saturday. Yes, what am I doing here on a Saturday with you? Making sure I'm sticking to my schedule, at least to committing to having a show once a week. So if you are streaming on social media somewhere out there, you're catching this show. Hi, hello, drop a comment down below. We're on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, also on Nextdoor. So if you're connecting with me Nextdoor, hi, happy to see you here. And of course on Instagram. I do see there's like a little warning here on the X platform. So I suggest you jump on over to one of the other streaming platforms so you can get all this information in the form of edutainment, of course. I'm your host, Lisa Gillett. If you're new to me, I am a real estate broker, boutique owner of Devenio Estates. I have done many things in this industry as it relates to education, real estate literacy, just empowering folks. I mean, I've done tons, author, training, you name it. You know, I've created apps, designed systems, all kinds of fun stuff. And the show here allows me to really just kind of let my hair down, if you will, and not be in such a very formal setting and just have fun and just have a conversation with you all about the things that I read and see and experience every day. Okay, let me minimize here. Let's see. All right, so that way I can keep tabs of what's happening on Instagram. It's so funny. I'm fascinated with all these new tools out here. All right. So before we jump into it, let me do this real quick. We are talking, let me see, remove that. It's asking me, like I said, there was an issue with the X platform. So I'm going to go ahead and move that. We're good there. All right, cool. Let's talk about real estate goals. As you know, we'd like to kick off the show with talking about real estate goals. If you are new or if you are watching, like I said, say drop a comment, hit share. And we're going to jump into real estate goals. And today's topic, of course, is going to be, oh my gosh, episode 264 already. 264 episodes. I think I miscounted. So, you know, we're headed toward 300. So we'll keep track. But I feel like we're headed. I'm off a couple episodes, but just for naming's sake, we're at 264. And I want to talk about, certainly you've heard, the reintroduction of the, what is it called? The reintroduction of the Stop Wall Street Landlord Act. President Donald Trump this year signed an executive order and the Senate passed the bill. So it is making its way through. So I want to talk about this, you know, for us to pay attention to something that resurfaced in 2022 and now it's here. So everything's about timing. I find it fascinating how the rules and the laws change depending, all right, of course, depending on an administration, the socioeconomic environment, the political environment. The timing seems to be right to right the wrongs. I was supposed to bring my book up, but you know, let me do a quick Google real quick. I'm gonna see if I can grab the image for you about the book. I won't do that. I won't do that now. But I've talked about this book and I've been reading it. I'm almost finished, and it just touches on so much important information. And I encourage you, if you are in real estate, you're curious about real estate, want to know how we got here. It's a really great book. I will grab it shortly. I'm not going to do it now, but I'll come back to it after the break. I'm going to grab it and we'll talk a little bit more about it. So let's get back to real estate goals real quick. So 2026, it is what? We're at March. We're in first quarter 2026. The market, if you're selling or buying, and he says, how is the market? How is the market? Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? And I will answer that depending. Well, it depends, right? You can tell I'm very coached. I'm very coached and trained. It depends. It depends if you are a buyer or if you are a seller or you're an investor. So it depends. Interest rates being high, just kind of fluctuating. Of course, the psyche of the country, the sentiment, consumer confidence, rising oil, that whole thing is going to play. And check out the episode 263 that we talked about how this war is affecting the mortgage interest rate environment. So, as we're talking about your 2026 goals, if investing, right, whether it's your single family, multifamily, commercial, storefront, this is the time to start exploring, right? Positioning yourself. I said last week, and I'll say last year, and I've said it over and over, just as a lovingly reminder to you all that real estate is a planned, it's intentional, not just popping up one day and I'm just going to go and buy real estate. It is a very strategic and planning to done right. So that way you're not making, quick decisions. You're not making the best decisions under the stress or pressures. Get with a real estate team, an advisor. Definitely start having conversations with your mortgage professionals so that you can put yourself in a position to make the right decisions for your situation, because ultimately that's the answer. In terms of selling, we've got markets, we've got hyper markets, hypo markets, sub markets, and local markets, and then you've got the major markets, which is the national on a national level. And so it depends where the property is located, where you're located, where you're looking to buy, because you've got some markets that are really popping off. It's hot, things are moving quickly, and you have other markets where not so much. I was reading recently South Bay, the Bay Area, where there's certain pockets that are really popping off because they're still seeing and projecting that the work from home mandates are not really forcing folks to go back to the office. But then when you look at an area like Sacramento, can you guess? I'm in California. Yes, when you look at areas like Sacramento, not so much. You're having this attrition, meaning you had people who left during the pandemic and they went and bought, and because the price was right. But guess what? They realized there's really nothing happening out there, right? No shade, Sacramento. My son and I, we've toured the train museum. Really cool. If you ever have a chance, go check out their train museum. It has all the historic trains and just kind of the story of the Industrial Revolution and the impact the trains have had on our lives and our country. So it's a really cool museum. I like museums. We like museums over here. We just went to the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. That was my to go. That was a bucket list for me. I wanted to do that 5 years ago and had a work play opportunity to do it. And it was extraordinary. Over 10,000 windows. I forget how many doors, 140 bedrooms, 23,000 square feet was this mansion, and a really cool ghost story that goes along with it. Winchester, yes, is cluing in. If you think about, oh, I've heard that name. The clue to Winchester is, yes, the gentleman who invented the Winchester rifle. And that's what helped him amass all his wealth, was the sale of the Winchester rifle during the Civil War. So we have that. Civil War would have been World War, excuse me. All right. With that being said, right, I've covered real estate goals from local all the way down to visiting real estate properties, architecture. Go get curious. Go. Not yet. Let's wait after the show, then go get curious. So that's really intriguing for me. And I immerse myself, as you can see, right? Ready, Set, Real Estate hat, the sweater, pajamas, towels, cups. I've got so much merch. It's crazy. I'm fully immersed because I'm curious. I'm so curious. So stay curious. I encourage you to stay curious. All right. With that being said, let's jump into, I'm going to do sponsor break. We're going to do it. We're going to do classroom style today. I've got a slide I've got a slide put together for those of you who are visual. For those of you who are listening to the audio podcast, I know they've got an option available there, but nevertheless, I'll talk us through. So follow the sound of my voice. No, follow the sound of my voice, and we'll bring you right back after this sponsor break. I'll make sure I'll grab that book for you shortly. All right. So today's sponsor is Omnis Property Solutions. Really get yourself together with a property preservation team, especially if you're an agent or property owner and you need a crew and a team to help you do cleanouts, restoration, improvements. They're our go-to partner, especially because we deal in the arena of probate and trust sales, and we're always needing to utilize the services of third-party vendors that work and support our clients who already have a lot on their plate. So make sure you get with the right team. We'll be right back after this break.
Do you have properties that need to be maintained? For professional services that guarantee your property will stay safe and secure, Omnis Property is the team you want by your side. As a company, we pride ourselves on our best-in-class professionals, equipped with the latest technology for all your end-to-end property preservation needs. That means that from start to finish, our expert team can handle everything from accurate assessments to preservation projects of all sizes. Save money and time by working with leading experts that understand your needs and are committed to premier service. Get started today by contacting us for your project estimate. Visit www.omnispreservation.com or call 310-957-9132.
I definitely have to see. So thank you. Yeah, shout out to Omnis Property Solutions. Really helpful. Let me do this real quick. I want to play around and toggle with I'm going to bring over the slide real quick. I want to toggle. Let's see, did that change? See, that didn't change for those of you who are, oh, it did. Cool. Okay, very good. See, I'm looking at both multi-screens here for the Instagram for those of you who are tuning in. So I'm just trying to see if they can see the slide once they are there. So if you can tilt your phone, if you're on IG, just tilt your phone. It should probably give you a landscape view of that. So what we're covering today is banning large investors from buying single family homes. Who's here for this? By a show of hands, raise your hand. I'm here for this. I'm here to learn more about this. In fact, I was reading, so I grabbed the book. Let me just share with you real quick. So this was the book that I was referring to. It's called Home Wreckers. Home Wreckers. And it says how a gang of Wall Street kingpins, hedge fund magnates, crooked banks, and vulture capitalists suckered millions out of their homes and demolished the American dream. Really interesting because this book talks about very closely to my community. He has properties that I know. He referenced different areas that I'm like, I know that house. I know that neighborhood. So pretty interesting to see a very popular book. The author is Aaron Glantz, Pulitzer Prize finalist, and this book really puts together the aftermath of what we were living during the housing crisis and a lot of things that we saw as it relates to reverse mortgages, how they started to become popular, how they started to target Black, brown, low-income communities, and what ended up happening, affecting the dynamic of the generational transference of that property from one generation to the next. And we're still feeling that. We're still seeing that. So you can imagine, I've mentioned it in the past on the platform or on the show, and we're now at this time, we are seeing it, we're living it during the pandemic and onward. We as a company have been managing many probate and trust sales dealing with the transference of one generation to the next generation. Get together with a great team, a legal team, a real estate team. I cannot stress this enough because it is a lot to navigate through the decedent's, right? The deceased owner's paperwork, to navigate manage their whole life, to try to go through what they've left behind and try to make sense of it, not just for yourself, but for the heirs and or beneficiaries of that estate. So can't stress enough. But this is all tied in. So now I see it's gotten a little bit more traction because our current president makes lots of noise, right? Good or bad, like him or love him or hate him, whatever your position is. But I think he and his team are great at marketing. And this is no surprise because this man has a real estate background and he comes from that. His father is mentioned in the book that I'm referring to. Let me drop it here in the comments real quick. So just so you guys can have it. So check out reading. Yes. On this show, we encourage reading, daily reading. Check out the book, Home Wreckers. In fact, I learned about the book on Nextdoor app. So shout out to, I believe it was another agent on the on that platform. At the time, I had been reading, I believe it's called I was reading The Color of Money at the time when someone shared that book. So check out the book Home Wreckers. The Color of Money is also a good one. I've got some good stuff. So if you really want to know what I'm reading or what's been on my reading list, just send me a quick message and I'm happy to share with you. You can drop a message you can text me. I'll give it to you real quick. 323-488-3265. That's my cell, direct cell, 323-488-3265. Okay, so enough about our reading list. Let me bring us back to real quick the show. And before I do that, I got one more disclaimer because, I get on here. I don't want folks saying, well, you told me and you gave me this advice and I went and did this. And then now you're like mad at me. You're not going to do that, of course, right? So quick disclaimer here. Let me just bring it back. The information provided on this show should not be considered legal or tax advice. Please seek legal and tax advice from those reputable licensed professionals. Who? Say for the people in the back, those reputable licensed professionals. Well, Lisa, can I contact you? Yes, you may contact me and we can talk just specifically about your situation. Here on the show, we're having a very general conversation, very general, not to your specific. But if I say something that resonates, don't hesitate to drop me a text, okay? Give me a call and say, hey, I got a situation. I'm here for it, okay? Very good. And I think I shared real quick. So I'm going to just remind you just my background. Broker owner, pricing strategy advisor, short sales and foreclosure certified, senior residential specialist. And all that means is I continue my education. Until I have no more speaking parts in this life, which means to the day I die, essentially, frankly, I plan on learning. In fact, speaking of learning, I wanted to sharpen my Spanish speaking skills, especially for those of you who know I am pending bar exam results, right? To be officially an attorney, real estate attorney. And I wanted to sharpen my Spanish speaking. I do speak Spanish. I am bilingual. However, I noticed shifting into that arena, there's going to be some conversational words that refers to probate and wills and testamentary trusts and intestate and testate and beneficiaries and that whole thing. So I realized I wanted to sharpen my skill set so that I can make sure I can relate and communicate and advocate to the Spanish speaking community in our area and beyond, of course, because we refer business out as well if we can assist those clients directly. Okay, with that being said, let's get back to the show. I'm like, all right, Lisa, cut it out. That's enough. It's enough already. It's enough. Okay, large investors. So you heard me mention, this bill was introduced in 2022, and now we have the reintroduction of this bill in this year, 2026, and they're referring to large investors. See, definitions are important. Who are we talking about? Who are we talking to? Shout out to Jenny, Susie. I see Muse. I see folks online on IG. Hey guys, hey gals. Happy Saturday. Who are we referring to when we talk about large investors? So these bills, or at least now the reintroduction and narrowing, right, defining the rules of this proposed regulation, says that it considers any entity owning 100 or more single family homes are large investors. So what does that mean? It may potentially impact not just the large Wall Street players. We think large investors, and that's what this has been about, right? Stop Wall Street. Again, I'm mentioning the book. This is the book. The book talks about home wreckers and how the big banks, and you have, Charles Munchin, and you have, Donald Trump's father, and then when he took over and what that was like, and you have Barrick, and you had the presidents and the VPs from One West Bank, and I mean, it's juicy. This is a juicy read. It gives you all the juiciness that you can now get caught up to see how this is starting to play out. To me, it's very interesting because you see Trump kind of, right? You would say he's kind of turning on his people because his father was one of these guys, large investors that cut a deal during the Obama administration. Yes, President Obama might hurt some people's feelings here, but good and bad with all administrative parties. They come in and they've got a plan and they execute that plan. Hey, Tracy, she says, way to go, Lisa. Thank you, Tracy. And so here we're starting to see, and I've said this before, what we're seeing is the uber rich versus the uber rich kind of is, everyone is vying for this power play in this position, especially with this transference wealth, $1 trillion of transference of wealth passing through hands in property, single family, mainly will be my focus. Definitely connect with a financial planner, certified advisor, someone who is in stocks, and they can give you all the scoop about the personal property. Those are the stocks. Those are personal property. Stocks, the mutual funds, the other assets in those investment vehicles. Here we're talking about real property. So here, this is exciting. I'm excited to talk about this right now because I lived that time, the financial crisis. I lived it. I've seen it. I've seen the ghost towns. We saw robo signing, Wells Fargo doing bad behavior, getting into bad behavior. And during that time, a deal was cut. The Obama administration allowed Wall Street, right? Allowed these guys to come in and, in essence, save housing from crashing, save the housing industry. And they allowed them to buy upwards of $1,000 single family homes across the country without stipulation. That's why these bills and the proposed bans are now important, because they're looking to undo the damage they allowed during the Obama's administration. I get it. He had some good stuff come out of that. HARP, right? Making keep your home programs is what came out of that administration as well. We also got dollar for dollar tax credits to incentivize homeowners to purchase their property, their first property. So if you purchase a property during that time, your down payment was reflected as a dollar for dollar tax credit on your income tax. And you got that back as a refund. Hello. Can we bring some of those back, by the way? That was a real, talk about the stimulus package. They really stimulated the economy during that time. And it worked. It kept us afloat. It kept us from still being a stronghold in this country. And we didn't have to become a nation like Japan, unfortunately, where you've seen their real estate market still has not recovered in over, I believe now, over 4 decades. So here we're starting to see, from a political standpoint, doing something about the damage that they allowed to happen back during the housing crisis, right? So we needed someone to come in, buy these properties in bulk, but then what was the result of that? We ended up getting Wall Street landlords. We got Wall Street landlords. And what was worse is then we got landlords, corporate landlords, who weren't even caring about the condition of those properties. I could just go on and on about the history of this because I did a whole talk about this many years ago. And so as I'm speaking, it's just coming to me. It's just flowing to me as verbal vomit. But I won't do that to you on the Saturday. The goal is to just come on here and chit chat about this bill. And then I'm going to jump in and enjoy the rest of my weekend. And then I'll see you next week. But I see, you can tell when I love what I'm talking about, because then I'm just going on and on. All right, let's let's move on. I'm catching myself here. So let's break this out. Proposed ban. So this again, we went from the financial housing crisis where we allowed large investors to come in and buy properties in bulk for pennies on a dollar with no stipulation. What does that mean? We didn't require them to sell those homes back after 20 years, 10 years, 30 years. We didn't require them to give the tenants the first right of refusal to make an offer to purchase on those properties. Instead, they just made it into really a great investment vehicle. It was almost an annuity, right? You've heard some people on social media talk about the best annuity are rental properties, because people will figure out and find a way to make sure they make that rent for you, make that rent every month. And that's what we're seeing is they being corporate investors saw there was big money, a stream of income flowing from rental housing. And unfortunately, during that time, we also see that people wanted to save face. The psyche of the people were, I would rather pay more in the rent, sometimes above the mortgage that they just defaulted on. You couldn't afford the 2,500, but now you're paying corporate landlords 3,000, 3,700 to stay in the same house that you just lost. Those were the deals that they were making. They bought it and said, hey, we're now the new landlord. You've lost the property, but we'll rent it back to you. We'll rent it back to you. So no stipulations were negotiated as part of that, as part of the federal government allowing investors to come in as investors to buy these properties in bulk. So we saw in 2022, there was the proposal of the Stop Wall Street Landlords Act. That bill at that time denied certain tax and other benefits to large investors whose assets exceed $100 million, and it imposed an excise tax on sale or transfer of single-family homes equal to the price of such home. So really, almost a penalty, but they're going to call it an excise tax. And it prohibits large investors from obtaining certain federal mortgage assistance. We saw that play out as well, right? Everyone got government help. Even these folks, they used federal mortgage money purportedly to invest in the properties, restore them, or construct them, and none of that happened. You could check more about what happened if you want to know. Check out Home Records; it talks about that. And so now we move forward. To President Donald Trump's. Oh, my slide! I missed a note here. But anyway, it repeats twice. So what it should read is Trump's January 2026 executive order, referring to stopping Wall Street from. Let me go. From competing with Main Street buyers. I thought that was a very creative name. It was Stop Wall Street from competing with Main Street buyers. Here's the thing with executive orders, guys. Executive orders are not necessarily a new invention of something, right? If you know how laws are created, there's a process. The House of Representatives and the Senate have to approve. It goes to the president for signing and veto. It becomes a bill, and then you have the whole process of pocket vetoes, etc. If he doesn't respond, etc. So check that out and understanding a little bit of that. It behooves us to understand this process, especially because we'll see things on social media or AI generated things on social media, and we take it at face value, and we're not understanding the legal or procedural process of how we enact laws. So here with the executive orders, all he's doing is he is presenting an order from something that was already proposed, right? So it's not necessarily new. It's I'm going to grab, and he and other presidents have done this. This is why when we were talking about when he brought in Elon Musk and everyone says, well, that's against the law. No, all he did was, right, when he brought in and he created that new agency, is what he did was he restructured an already existing agency that Biden had in play. And he restructured the agency and the role of the agency. So it's not something new. It was within his purview, within his executive power to do that, because it was something already in play, in existence. So pay attention to when we talk about orders, it's not necessarily new. It's just a recreation or reframing of a legal framework, right, or rule that was already proposed. And it's like, hey, let's use parts of this, right, pieces of that. I'm just giving you a little informational tidbit on how all this stuff works. So President Donald Trump proposed that he wants to ban large investors from buying or competing with single or individual property owners who would buy those properties that occupying. And then we saw that the Senate passed, which nudged me or triggered me to come on and talk about it today, because this past week we read that the bipartisan bill has passed, and both the House and the Senate says this is not a Republican thing. This is not a Democrat thing. This is a homeownership issue, and they're still trying to figure out how do we fix the monster that we created during the housing crisis. And that is some true accountability to recognize for people who don't understand the mess that we're in now, that it got just too big for us to now control. And that's what we see homeowners are up against: large investors, big pools of money, and money coming from all over the country into different investment vehicles. And so that's what you're seeing here is two things. I think I briefly touched on the FinCEN rule that just went into effect. So now they're wanting more transparency on entities who are buying single family properties. It doesn't affect commercial, yet they will maybe look into commercial, but in terms of moving money, washing money, laundering money, financial crimes, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, has proposed a new rule that went effect this month, and it directly affects real estate transfers by entities and trusts with certain exceptions like estate planning. And they've got to report and disclose who the owners are and who the beneficiaries are. They want to really pull back the veil. So I'm tying these two things in because that's what's happening right now. They're trying to undo the mess that was created, and the shell companies, the corporate investors who are basically covering up who is really benefiting, right? Company ABC makes an offer to buy this property, and then company XYZ makes a competing offer, but they're all owned by the same company. So what are they doing here? They're like, well, if ABC company doesn't get the property, then XYZ company still gets it. And guess what? We still win because we overall, right? We are the parent company that owns all the subsidiary companies. And that's why this is important. I just really think we're at an interesting time here. It is timely. We're in 2026. We're talking about now 20 years now, plus or just under 20 years. I got in the business in 2006, and it was a very high time, right, in terms of the real estate market. And interest rates were low. Adjustable rate mortgages were very popular. And people were doing all kinds of things to be creative to get their foot in the door. But at the same time, it was because once that market tanked and investors got involved, now we were dealing with another beast here. And we're still seeing, right, we're still feeling the effects of this. So I've touched on a couple of things, major things. I've talked about transference of wealth, probates, and trusts. That means we're dealing with a generation that is passing on and leaving a very large inheritance. And that's because they purchased their properties for $16,000, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000. It certainly is not at today's market value, which is, anywhere from 400 on average. The median over the United States is 400,000 is the cost of property. The median in the United States is 400,000. Yes, I'm licensed in California. That is not our median. That's not our median, but the median over the nation. And so here we still have a significant amount of money that is being transferred among families. And what comes with that? Predatory behavior from investors and agents. Not all are bad, and agents who are looking to line their pockets and fill their pockets, and really are out here robbing equity from a lot of these families. This is a big part of why I have Ready Set Real Estate as a show, as a channel to get that information out in terms of empowering folks. Okay, so restriction, revisiting the restriction here in a nutshell. It restricts institutional investors from buying single family homes that could otherwise be purchased by individual owner occupant families. But here's the interesting or competing argument. For people who are really dissecting this bill, this proposed bill, they're saying large investors make a very small share of buyers in the single family market. They're not like they're not representing even 50, not nowhere near 50%. They're a very small percentage of buyers that are taking the market share. So some folks argue that really, yes, there's a restriction and that's all good, but that's not really going to help. That's not really going to help. So those are things too. Hey, Grady, good seeing you. Good checking you out. I see you dropping the LIBOR. It's not really something that we're expecting to see if we put a limit on them, right? Limit on institutional buyers, if it's going to be impactful. Let me go back to the limit. In fact, did I miss a slide? Let me go back here. No. So let me just say large investors. So the restriction or the ban is investors are not allowed. They're prohibited from purchasing any more single family properties if they already have a portfolio of 350 homes. I thought it was going to be something a lot smaller. I'm like, 100 homes, but they're saying 350 is the limit. Wow. 350. 350. Do you think that really is going to, for those who are already at 100 and 200 and they're building, we get into this really, I guess we can get into this very curious conversation or interesting conversation as, does this start to impose on someone's rights? But then we're talking about corporate. So corporate really doesn't have rights, right? Corporate entities, not so much. And this is why we have bills that are carving out. They're trying to stop large investors, but then they've got to carve out exceptions, because then you have some mom and pop entities that have LLCs, that have corporations, that have trusts, and they own property, or properties are funded into those entities. And you kind of have this fine line that they're trying to stop large investors, which is why they said the original proposal in 2022 was if they had over 100 or at least $100 million in assets, then this is who this would apply to. Here, they're trying to get a little creative and restrictive and put a number in terms of, well, let's look at how many homes they have, not necessarily how much $1 million in assets they have, but let's put a limit on the number. So the number right now is 350. Number's 350. We'll see if that changes. However, the bill also proposes an exception. It includes exceptions to build to rent projects, because they're saying if you're going to start to put a cap on this, that means you're going to limit some of the money, right? The investors who, unlike owner occupant buyers, someone who's buying a property to move in and live in it, usually have limited assets to come and remodel, improve a home, because they're usually oftentimes using traditional financing. And I love when I get this question when people say, I want to buy, I'm interested in buying a fixer. I love this question because I get it. You're looking for a deal. You're looking for something you can fix. You're looking to maximize the appreciation once the property is improved. You want to get that ARV. But here's the reality. Unless you're doing construction, a construction loan, private money, hard money, a good percentage of your own money, right? Upwards of 40%, 50% down. You're not going to be able to, unless you do a FHA 203K loan, or you also do I believe it's Freddie Mac has their home renovation mortgage. They have their conventional loan. Unless you're doing those loans, and even with those types of loans, they have restrictions of how much you can improve the property, and ultimately you still have to qualify for it. So I say that to share, investors tend to be the ones that will buy the property as is, right? Jacked up foundation. Some of those home renovation loans for first time buyers, they tread lightly when there's foundation problems. Roof, not so much. Electrical, not so much. Plumbing, not so much. That's, light work. Foundation, they don't really like to deal with foundation problems of a property. A very big ticket item. So it's important here as we're starting to carve out, right? We're trying to target large investors with this. And then we're trying to say, well, we don't want them to compete with the individual person who's looking to buy this property. But in reality, when I think about it, in practice, right? Not in theory and conversation, but in practice, in what I'm seeing, it's rare. If a property needs work, there's a very small pool of buyers, owner-occupant buyers that can, one, qualify for that property, and two, would even be interested in taking on a project, which is why investors tend to be important. Very important. So some things to think about as we're having this discussion and exploring this stop Wall Street from being a landlord. So I leave that to you. I'd love to hear your questions, comments, and feedback. Drop me a comment, send me an email and say, hey, Lisa, I learned this. I'd love for you to talk more about this. This will wrap up today's episode on banning large investors from buying single family homes. The way it was re-proposed by Trump's executive order this year was called Stopping Wall Street from Competing with Main Street Buyers. I thought that was clever in terms of Main Street buyers, because that's who we work with often. I do have a handful of investors that we do work with. And like I said, I see it from both sides in terms of the pros and cons. Oftentimes it's, you don't have your owner occupant buyers that are typically going to take on properties that need lots of work. So, you need investors, but I also get it. When you've got someone that's got a good lion's share, right? A lion's share of the properties across the country, you kind of go, hey, we got to put a limit on this, because the reality of it is they won't ever return back to the market. You know what? I got ahead of myself because I just remembered one more exception to this. The exception to the build to rent projects and renovations is that the property is to be sold after 5 years, giving the tenant the first right to purchase. And so even with that, they're wanting to carve out the exception to encourage investors, right? They're saying, hey, we still need your money to build up more housing. However, we don't want you to keep it as a rental property. We want you to sell it to the tenant or put it to the open market after 5 years. And there, I think, becomes that, it's that fine line where they say, well, that's not really a good deal for us. How is that helping us? Grady says, as always, thank you for the free game. Absolutely. You already know the best place to get it is right here on your favorite podcast, Ready, Set, Real Estate. And we'll see you next week for another information-packed episode right here. Same time, same place, with the exception of if I have something during the week, I'll come and accommodate another show day. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, you guys. You guys have been amazing. Thank you for chiming in and sharing your Saturday with me. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Ready, Set, Real Estate Podcast with Lisa Gillett, the LA Super Agent. Please like, subscribe, and share LA Super Agent everywhere on your favorite podcast